there? Maybe. It's in a conversation. Because also is receiving the piece for the exhibition, so maybe.
Oh, is somebody dropping off artwork?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Because we're having an exhibition with the 80s.
Hammer Time? Is it the Hammer Time exhibition?
We are
Oh, we are. Okay. All right. Should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the exhibition's title is "A Funnel, is a Flower, is a View of a River from Above." It all kind of stemmed from, well, the title of the show kind of stemmed from this painting, and I've had like a fascination with like patterns in nature for a really long time. Like the way that there's repeating patterns on all these different scales, like the way that like landforms look from up above, look a lot like microscopic things under, like when you're looking really closely. And that's something that I've been really interested in. But I'm also really interested in the way that people turn like what they really enjoyed with the patterns in nature into textiles, into tiles, and into architecture. And like a big part of what I was hoping to do in this artist residency, which has been about 3 weeks, is to just spend more time like looking around and really taking in what feels good in my gut. So like, you know, like walking around with real intention to notice like when certain colors or textures or combinations and tensions go together, and try to take like a physical photograph. Sorry, not a physical photograph, I guess, like a mental photograph, and really internalize like the beauty in something that I see around town. Like it could be like, for example, the way like in this piece over here, the way that a hard edge of a building touches the sky, and the way that there's all this overlapping texture on the buildings, but also from the shadows of trees and other buildings from around. And my intention was to kind of take like, sometimes I was taking photos, like actual photos where I was referencing, but other times just taking note internally of how that feels. And it's interesting for me because these paintings are so fresh. Like, you know, this one I just finished. Well, actually, I didn't finish it, but I was working on it yesterday. And how, like, just from walking around, I didn't intentionally put these scallop marks, these scallop shapes into the painting, but I guess I was paying attention to the way that the way that certain roofs and the sort of scalloped edges on the roofs meet the windows or meet the sky. And it came out in my painting as well. And then, so that's like an example, I think, of like a pattern that I noticed, and it kind of came out intentionally. And the one of the sky with the building, that was more of a direct, like, I really like that, I'm gonna remember to put that in a painting. And then there's other paintings that I was doing where I was just kind of improvising and trying to create like a scene that was really immersive. And while I was painting the patterns and the marks, I would kind of follow like the colors that would feel really good. Like I started transitioning these blues into these green colors. And I think, like, I'm a firm believer that what you expose your brain to, it somehow is in there subconsciously. And I think that when I was painting these, I was probably drawing out like the feelings that I've had from looking at like gasoline on water or like oil patterns on water, because, you know, I'm not looking at an image of it. I don't have a photo of it. I think it's from like noticing rainbows and things. And I think that this body of work that I've been working on for the past 3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks, to be honest, because it took me a while to settle in, are a mixture of like different levels of awareness of the way that patterns affect me when I'm out and about. Yeah, I've been having some really interesting conversations with people too, like about what they see in the paintings. And I found this artist residency to be, like this show in itself, like this exhibition, to be a great opportunity for me to like pause in like stages of a painting that I normally wouldn't pause at. If you ever see my other work, I put a lot of layers of color in painting. Like this is closest sort of to the kind of work I've done in the past. But pieces like this one, for example, like I often will do a lot of patterns on like multiple paintings and then work with a few at a time. And this would be covered with something else again. And so this residency has kind of offered me this opportunity to look at mid stages on like with like a white background, like in like a almost like a finished presentation way. And it's yeah, there's a lot that I'm processing live because these paintings are so fresh, you know. I think a lot of you guys are probably artists in here. It's always interesting to look back at paintings when you're done and learn like about yourself and also about perception in general, like how things come out. And I think that was another like loose intention in the work here. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious if anybody had any like questions or like things that kind of came to mind when they were looking at the different pieces.
Well, it's a very quick connection. This is something that's useful for me, and from what you were saying, maybe it's useful for you too. There's this Danish, I think it's Danish painting. It's called Tal Art. And there's this like short documentary of him painting like these huge paintings of trains. But he's saying like the important thing for me is not how like the train looks like. I don't want to look up like the real image of a train. Like what I need to do is like to translate my gut feeling of the train, and that's the mystery.
Yeah.
And you were saying a bit of the same thing, I guess, with some stuff.
Yeah, like I'm not what interests me isn't representing something like directly in a literal and in a linear way, but to like kind of like use my senses and use my let what feels good and balanced guide me and like really feel what that feels like, because I think the more you pay attention to something, the more it is ingrained in your mind. And then when I'm painting on various levels, those internal photographs, I guess, come out. And I think for me as an artist and just as a person, it's an interesting tool to learn more about myself, but also like about how people see things. And yeah, I think it's one of those things where in a couple of weeks I'll look back at these paintings and something else will become clear to me about how I am. And that's kind of a big part of how I work, is like I have a lot of personal symbology and like style that I work with. Like I have like certain constraints that I put in to draw out something subconscious. So in the past, like I've been painting for maybe like 15, 16 years. in the past, I had like a very strict constraint. Like everything I draw is angular with corners, like no curved lines. And I just found that when I was doing that, I was just trying to make things look dimensional initially. But when I started doing that with these rules, I would just like kind of like looking at clouds. I let what three-dimensional shape that's appearing on the paper lead the next thing. And it was interesting because like sometimes I would be like, oh, that looks like a face, or that looks like a tree, and then that would guide the next part of the painting. And it became like a style that I use for a lot of my commercial projects and for like my murals. And I think that that is something that came from this artist residency, is that I reconnected with that part, which is something I haven't done for a couple of years. And initially, I thought this was going to be more of an exploration of medium. Like I thought it was going to be more of like, I was going to do more sculpture and try a different, like I was going to try plaster or like metal. But then I realized that like, well, especially because it was only like a couple of weeks, what I really enjoy the most and want to kind of continue on is the work that I had done maybe 8 years ago before people started to ask me to do like a lot of work that has images and motifs that I was doing before. But yeah, that's basically what I've been up to in the past couple of weeks, is like being in this room, and like some of the sketches became paintings and others just kind of like, I just put down a certain pattern, and then from what it made me think of, I would start painting.
You did all of this in this room?
Yeah. With the exception of this, like this drawing was mostly done in a coffee shop, and I was drawing, like I was really enjoying like the look of glass. I really like transparent things that are really shiny and have like, yeah, like that you can see through, and have really dark areas as well as like, yeah, clear sections. And I was trying to feel and take in like the way that the shadows and the light of like a transparent object feel. And this is like a metal spoon. I was really interested in like glass and metal as well, like texture, I guess.
Yeah, right.
And trying to like take that into, translate that and use those same things I like when I'm doing like a realistic sketch into these organic, like slightly improvised shapes. This is a motif I've done before, like the butterfly, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been really like putting a lot of attention towards, is how it feels when I look at glass, how it feels when I look at shadows on a building that have texture on it already, and just I think I've become like practiced in picking up patterns, and like even the image over there, it's inspired by a moment where there's a building with that one over there. This one. There was a moment the other day where I saw a building with like marble texture, and then and there was like dirt on it, kind of like this yellowing stuff on the building, and then there was a shadow of a tree on it, and it's like it's just really like enjoyable to stand there and look at the way that all the different patterns overlap.
Yeah, I really love these things.
Yeah. And that's kind of a direct like, it's what happened after I saw that, I guess.
What I find interesting about your work is that the first impression when you look at the canvases of yours is that there is, the feeling is flat, because first of all, like you use these angular shapes and they're all Some of them are using a texture, but some of them are using like this flat color. But then the key to looking at your canvas is to look at them as if they are 3D. So there is always like as you sit next to the canvas, as you look at it, you have to imagine that we are kind of traversing a dimension and we're entering the dimension of the artwork, and then within it, the structure is just a flattened version of that 3D world. And many of those, many of your canvases, they have again the entire world within them. It's sort of you're entering into that space, and then you become also like this element in them. You have to imagine that there's entire world within them. And in some canvases here, you can really tell it. And for me, it's also in this canvas that you're working on, it's such a interesting feeling that you have, which is, yes, like we're looking upwards to the sky through the wings of a butterfly, and then the butterfly itself, it's like almost like we're looking at this reality through shattered glass and the kaleidoscope image of the world. And that's such a bizarre feeling when you start to really meditate by looking at these canvases of yours. And yeah, it's such a when I'm listening to you speak about all of these details that come into your work, for example, the different patterns that you see and how they are a sort of like echoes of, first of all, the repetitions that we see in the world, in the organic matter, and then it somehow overlaps with the man-made objects like the buildings and the architecture,
Patterns like on clothing. Yeah.
patterns on clothing. So it is a very rich world that you're building in the image, and that for me is a very interesting feeling. I can look at your pieces and see shift in that kaleidoscope, and that suddenly I turn that kaleidoscope and I'm looking at the butterfly, and then turn that kaleidoscope. No, it's now like I'm looking at the sky, and it's all in one image. It's a very interesting feeling that it creates.
I think I am very interested in like what you describe is very much aligned with like not my thought process, but like in the things that I am interested in. Yeah, like I do really like imagining, like it's a fun, pleasurable thing to imagine scale.
Mm-hmm.
And relation, like how small we are and how large we are, you know, in the universe. And it's like a really, I don't know, it's like an enjoyable way to see things when I'm walking around, because it just gives me that shift. It makes things less mundane, and like I think that in some ways my paintings are like that, because the kind of paintings that I enjoy as well are ones that have like require like multiple reads and different visual entryways, and like sometimes you look at it like as a whole, and then sometimes you have to look at certain parts, and it's actually a lot of the work I enjoy, the kind of paintings and photos and stuff that I really like. That piece was interesting. I had an interesting conversation with somebody earlier, like in the day, and they were looking at it like as like a bird's eye view, looking down, and they said that they could see like little islands and stuff, and but you know, for me, when I was painting it, like I didn't exactly set out to do anything aside from like follow what feels balanced and good. But when I was finished, I turned it upside down, and it made me think of birds and flight. But a big part of my work and what I'm trying to revisit and go back to, especially in this residency, is tuning into those good gut feelings. Like I really, in particular, liked this really sharp mark. And originally this was upside down, but I really like the way this feels, and so I replicated it on here, and I think that it works really well because there's this contrast of this soft, bleedy ink texture and like a really definitive mark. And I think in this moment, in this phase of the painting, I'm not sure where this is going to end up, because this time at this artist residency has kind of got me to see this, what I would call a work in progress, like middle of the painting phase, to be almost like finished. And maybe it's like the way that I'm achieving multiple perspectives is through all the different pieces together, like rather than in one painting trying to like create more depth or create more worlds. I don't know. It's yeah, it's been a really great experience. And also like all the conversations that we've been having every week, and it's going to be interesting when I go back to Vancouver, go back to Canada, and work out of my studio, and it's also, I think, like a muscle, like to walk around and to really notice things and really like be intentional about like taking in combinations, shape combinations, light combinations when I'm looking around the city. And yeah, that's something I've been doing more on this trip. It's just like practicing that muscle of like noticing. Yeah.
Thank
For sharing.
you. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to my thoughts.
I can clap, I will clap.
This is the coolest necklace.
Yeah.